There are so many camera choices out there. If you're struggling to decide between a camera specification and which one you should prioritize before buying a camera, then this video is for you. So let's dive in. Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to talk exactly how to pick the right beginner's camera. I'm going to focus on an SLR type of camera, but if you have questions regarding any other camera system, do drop me a comment below. So before we dive in, let's understand what's the difference between a modern mirrorless and a DSLR camera. A DSLR or a digital single reflex camera is the digital version of an SLR film camera. All SLR camera uses a mirror and prism to reflect the image up to the viewfinder and record an image on a sensor. A mirrorless camera is completely opposite to this. It in fact doesn't have a mirror, and now the light is directly recorded onto an image sensor. To see a preview of the image, it is viewable by an electronic viewfinder or an EVF. Because mirrorless eliminates the whole mirror system from a SLR, it is much lighter when compared to a DSLR camera. However, the same case doesn't apply to lenses. The lenses still use the same tech as a DSLR camera. Mirrorless cameras have a lot of advantages when compared to an SLR camera, and with every new camera release, they are getting better and better. However, the digital version of the SLR cameras or the DSLR cameras also have few advantages when compared to a mirrorless cameras. These cameras are much more budget friendly these days. They boost a longer battery life, but I would still refrain from buying a DSLR camera today because a lot of brands are slowly and quietly phasing out SLR system altogether. So deciding between a mirrorless and a DSLR camera is going to be your first decision point. This nicely segues into your next decision point, whether you want to be focusing on photography or video making. If you are unsure, then I will still recommend going with a camera which supports both photography and video making. In my personal opinion, even if today you feel you're not going to make any videos, believe me, in future, if your camera doesn't have that capability to create videos, I'm sure you'll feel restricted by it. But the good news is most of the modern days cameras boast equally good features for both photography and video making. So let's first talk about photography. What are the features or specifications you should be looking in a photography camera? First of all, focus on the megapixel of a camera, and remember, higher megapixel doesn't mean the best image quality always. I have used several cameras over the years, and I feel a megapixel range between 20 to 24 is a sweet spot where the image size is still large enough, but the file size is manageable. Unless you're planning to make billboards and take huge prints, a 24 megapixel camera should be sufficient for most of the photography purposes. Let's come to videography, and as a bare minimum, you should be shortlisting a camera which has a capability of shooting 4K videos. This is quite critical because most of the screens these days, including your TV or your monitor, has the capability to display a 4K video. Having a 4K capability to shoot will really make your footage universal, and it will get displayed with an acceptable quality across multiple devices. For photography, and this is also relevant for videography, autofocus is quite key. This, in my opinion, has become quite critical, and the good news is that most of the modern days cameras, including crop sensor cameras, have very good autofocus. Manual focus is great if you have sufficient time, but if your focus is on a photography like wildlife, portraits, sports, street photography, autofocus is quite key. You don't want to be in the field shooting wildlife like animal or tiger and struggling to focus on the animal for that quick, decisive moment. Crop sensor are smaller sensors when compared to a full frame cameras. For beginners, I feel crop cameras a great way to start. They are essentially the same as a full frame camera but with a crop. I started my SLR journey with a Nikon D750, which was a crop sensor camera back in 2010. And I have used this camera for almost 8 years before switching to a full frame D750 camera. The full frame cameras are going to be a bit more expensive, and essentially you're going to get most of the features on a crop sensor camera. The only feature which I found lacking on most of the crop cameras was stabilization, which we'll also talk about in a minute. Also remember, some of the lenses are specifically designed for a crop sensor camera, which means these lenses will not work with a full frame camera. But there are plenty of lens options which work both on a full frame and a crop sensor camera. So in future, if you're planning to upgrade, then you may not have to sell those lenses. Since we are talking about cameras and lenses, I wanted to talk a bit about kit lenses, and this is a very debatable topic. So kit lenses are the lenses which comes bundled with a lot of cameras, but in my opinion, you should buy a camera body only and buy a lens separately. Though it is tempting to have that flexibility to zoom in my opinion, your first lens should always be a 50mm lens. And I know it is quite a debatable topic, but I haven't changed my opinion since 2010. When I got my first camera, I had bought a 50mm 1.8 basic prime lens separately. And you learn a lot using a 50mm lens, and once you're comfortable, you can always go and buy a lens, even a zoom lens. And there are a lot of economical zoom lenses options which are in fact much better than a kit lens. Having an in-body image stabilization, also referred as IBIS by a lot of brand, is quite critical for making videos. Unfortunately, when I was researching a bit about crop sensor cameras, I found most of the crop sensor cameras lacking this feature. One thing to note is a lot of camera bodies will offer digital stabilization, which is not the same as IBIS. What a digital stabilization will do is it will essentially crop your footage and then digitally try to make your footage stable, which in my opinion is quite rudimentary and also very jarring to watch at times. So this is going to be a serious limitation for crop sensor bodies, but not all crop cameras lack IBIS. And there are also multiple ways in which you can eliminate this. For example, keeping your camera steady, or using a tripod, or even using a gimbal. Here are some of the other features which you should be looking out in the camera. Though these are not the key features, essentially the key features are the ones which we already talked about. Most mirrorless cameras are lightweight these days and won't significantly vary from camera to camera. Crop sensor cameras are even lighter. Remember, it is the lens that makes the camera heavy. Your weight of camera will really matter, especially if you plan to do day-long shoots. The bigger is the better in this case, and these days we have fully articulated screens which are very handy if you want to do vlogs or even self-portrait photographies. Also consider the frames per second a camera can shoot, and this in particular is going to be key for action photography, but a FPS of around 8 to 10 should be sufficient enough. This is going to be quite an important decision, that is deciding on a brand. I feel choosing a brand is like marrying into a brand, and in future if you want to shift to another brand, it is going to be little difficult. The good news is, however, that most of the brands these days make excellent camera and have a vast lens ecosystem, including third-party lenses. If you're deciding on a brand, research a bit about not only their camera but also the lenses which the brand offers and possible lenses which you would think you might purchase in future. So finally, considering all these specs which we talked about till now, I researched few camera brands and I'm going to give you few recommendations which I think are excellent beginners camera. For Canon, go with Canon EOS R50. It is a 24 megapixel camera capable to shoot up to 4K videos 30 frames per second and is a crop sensor camera. For Sony, go with Sony ZV-E10L. It is a great crop sensor hybrid camera with a vari-angle screen, great for both photographers and vlogging. Another great camera from Sony is Sony a6700. It is more high-end crop sensor camera with a 24 megapixel capability and also has a in-body stabilization. It has more advanced video features when compared to ZV-E10. If I were to pick a crop sensor camera, and I do have a bias towards Nikon, then Z52 will be one of the top contenders. And if you're still considering buying a Nikon DSLR camera, then a Nikon D750 is a great choice. It's a crop sensor camera but has a lot of features for photography. And remember, with all these cameras, try to go for body only cameras and buy a 50mm lens separately, as we discussed. So there you have it. Did I miss any important specifications? Do drop me a comment below. And remember, a camera is only a tool. It is you, the photographer, behind the camera, which makes that image great. So treat your camera as a tool and focus on developing your photography skills. I have tons of photography tutorial videos and check out the playlist here. Be sure to subscribe, like and comment if you found my video to be helpful. And I will see you in another video very soon. Till then, happy clicking and bye.